What's something you found out about your significant other years into the relationship that made you reevaluate the whole thing? 9 months into the relationship, I found out he had a court date. He told me it was for assaulting a bouncer. Very soon after, his mother admitted that he had a court date for assaulting his underage relative. When I confronted him about this, he said that the underage girl raped him. When I told him he was full of crap, he went on to admit that she did something for him that I will not say. Soon after, I went into his lawyer's office with him and read the transcript. It turns out he had raped his underage niece twice and just tells a different lie to anyone who asks him why he's in jail. Total piece of crap. I ran very fast, haven't seen him since, and I hope I will never see him again. About 1 year in, he told me he was about to get full custody of his son. I didn't know he had a son. About a year in, I found out she lied to me about getting an STD test. Turned out she had more than one STD, which somehow I tested clean for. There is actually a reason for that. Some STDs have an easier time transmitting from men to women than from women to men. When I had my first child, the pregnancy wasn't a surprise or an accident. We talked and planned. He got a little overbearing during the pregnancy, like insisting on breastfeeding without even discussing it with me. I put it down to new dad nerves and not knowing any better. Turns out that was only the tip of the iceberg. He believed that children were completely and totally a wife's responsibility. He wouldn't change a diaper. He wouldn't pick up the baby when it cried. No way would he get up in the middle of the night. He expected me to work a full-time job plus do all of the childcare. At that point, I was confused and appalled, but I told myself he just needed time to adjust. I realized how delusional I was when the baby got sick while he was on a fishing trip. The doctors thought the baby had meningitis, so not just sick, but life-threatening sick. I called and asked him to come home. He refused. He'd paid for 2 more days of fishing, and he didn't want to lose the money. She would lie about tiny, inconsequential things, made me question my own perception of truth and self-instinct. Eventually caught her in a lie, and she denied even when presented with full proof. It wasn't something huge, but it was something that opened my eyes a little. My friend swears I was being gaslit. Out of nowhere, a year into being married, he said he wants to join the Marine Corps. He also wanted me to drop out of law school, birth babies, take care of his mother, and run a household, all while he's deployed. Hard pass. Found his hidden folder on his phone, blackmailed girls for nudes, stole nudes from girls, pretended to be someone else and sexted his sister without her knowing it was him. Constantly made me feel like I was crazy or overreacting. Also realized what him calling me a manic pixie dream girl meant. I'm hardly a perfect specimen of a human being. I would like to believe that I have a respectable amount of moral fiber, but boy, do y'all know how to pick 'em. 7 years in, after having been married a year, my husband finally confessed to me that he was raped as a child for 6 years by his older brother. It really threw the struggles of our SX life into perspective. Now knowing this, I have done all kinds of research, found how to support rape victims, info, and I've changed how I behave when we're intimate. We're working on it. I tell him every time we're intimate that it's an act of love and he's safe with me, and we have our safe word for general use if he's feeling overwhelmed. We're really making progress. I think things are better now. He's starting to understand that it's love in our marriage, and I want him to want me, and I want him to be a little controlling when he feels up to it. He's grown a lot, he's a very strong person, and I'm immeasurably lucky to have him. That is a lot of trauma and baggage to take on, but with the right person and a whole lot of love, I think you'll get through it. I realized he would always blame me for his angry outbursts and mistakes. He punched a wall and screamed about a homework assignment he didn't understand because I was sitting on the couch quietly. Then after he was finished blaming me and realized I was upset, he became all sad and wanted me to comfort him. What a pathetic human being. I'm glad I've grown past accepting that sort of behavior. That my husband wanted to start fires and kill police officers and was planning on framing me for it so his girlfriend could move in while I did his time in prison for him. We were driving home from a dinner in which we drove separately to, and without knowing it, she cut me off by merging into my lane last minute without using a blinker. I was annoyed at first, but when I recognized it was her car, it made me feel very strange. I think that makes sense. Knowing that your significant other might be really reckless on the road is worrying, concerning, very concerning, especially if you plan to have kids. That she cheated on me and that she lied about being psychologically abused by her father. She lied about being financially responsible and was formulating a plan to murder me. Today, my girlfriend told me that every time we argue, she wants to stab me. Now, she might not mean it, but that is certainly a red flag. That she had been in contact with her exes, met them, and regularly cheated on me with just whomever. 8 years, she was really good at hiding her tracks. I only found out because I contracted an STD, curable fortunately, from her. I was really glad we didn't have kids and divorced her, moved away and drank too much. Then I met the most awesome person in the world, who I married, had kids, and didn't know relationships could be this good. Turned out my husband, who was sober from illegal substances and alcohol, had been using booger sugar monthly for the last 15 years, just enough to maintain apparently. We have worked it out, but I was almost gone at that point. He hit a few addictions and withdrawals from me. I forgave him. He stole $4,000 from our joint savings that only I contributed to. I forgave him. He sexted and was trying to meet up with randos, which made me realize I should probably leave. But the thing that made me certain was when I realized he didn't actually want an equal relationship. He expected me to shop, cook, clean, and be responsible for him for the rest of our lives. He pretended to want what I wanted for years, and I was dumb enough to believe his excuses on why he just couldn't do it yet. I demand and I deserve a reasonable equal relationship. Divorce was one of the best things I ever did. That she wants to have fights and be mad. For example, we currently haven't spoken for 3 days and she's sleeping in the other room because I accidentally texted "good night, sleep tight" instead of just "good night" because I was the one going to bed, not her. So in her mind, that text must have been meant for another woman. We live together, we work together, we share a car. How on God's green earth could I have a side chick? She told me when we first met that she was broken as she suffers from depression. I didn't brush it off, so to speak, but just kind of thought, yeah, whatever, it won't be that bad. It's not because I don't think depression isn't serious, but I just had never even really been in contact with someone with depression, so I kind of had no idea what it entails. Hopefully that makes sense. 5.5 years of being together later, and holy cow, damn, depression is just super serious. I've been in situations and scenarios I never imagined being in because of her and her depression. She's phoned me up twice while she was working in London. I live 60 miles away in Kent, saying she loves me and she's sorry and she's going to end it. What the hell do I do? I didn't know what to frickin' do. Thankfully, both of those times she never went ahead with it, but still ended up in hospital, and obviously I went up to her. Sometimes she's just crying and crying and crying and crying. Countless visits to the GP for talks and medication. Again, things I've never dealt with before, and at first I was extremely uncomfortable about it all. This isn't for me kind of stuff. But the good news is it and she are part of my life now. I don't mind all of the above anymore. She loves me and I love her. What's even more amazing is that I'm the one that keeps her going, she says. This is life, and I'm now fully aware of the seriousness of depression. She recently got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Made me look back and realize a lot of her actions and anger stemmed from that. She just started mood stabilizers and has found a great therapist to help her work through everything. But it would have almost been a deal breaker if she didn't try to actively manage it. She lied to me, or rather flat out denied telling me that she has herpes. Guess who has herpes now? Her reasoning? I thought you wouldn't talk to me if you found out I had it. I would have kept talking to her, but perhaps I would have wrapped it up first before, doing the deed so soon. Just frickin' disclose that information at the start. Don't be a butt who gives someone an STD knowingly. Yeah, that is definitely just completely and utterly unacceptable. 7 years in, I found out he was a high school dropout without even a GED. He had initially told me he was a game design major, turned down a job opportunity or internship, I can't recall which, with EA Toronto because he didn't want to leave me. I literally told him, go, we can figure other crap out later. This won't wait. I should have known then. Ugh, love is blind, but only for so long. Turns out when she said she wanted to get married, she actually meant that she just wanted to get married, by which I mean wanting to get married is not the same thing as wanting to marry me. I just happened to be the guy that she was with at the time when her friends were getting married, and it was making her jealous, and her mother was also putting pressure on her to get married. It happens to a lot more people than you think. After several years together, my ex told me nonchalantly one evening that he stole $500 from one of his best friends because he really needed it. This ex was a college-educated person trying to get into dental, medical, or pharmacy school. Not only was there no reason for this person to steal their friend's money, I didn't understand how someone could do that and feel no remorse whatsoever, especially to someone they considered a good friend. It was at that moment that I seriously began to believe I had given my trust and love to a total sociopath. It was the catalyst that pushed me out of the relationship. I found out later that while I was working on a degree in another city, 20, he found dates on Tinder, spinning lies about being in med school and owning a luxury condo overlooking the Wisconsin state capitol. He'd take girls for rides on my motorcycle and bring them back to the condo I owned. I don't know who or how many, but a neighbor specifically went out of their way to tell me what was going on. One of his Tinder dates was with a good friend's best friend, and I heard through her the lies about being rich and working in medicine. A high school classmate of his texted me to warn me the same thing. He hit on a girl at a reunion by saying he was in med school at Wisconsin, but the girl was actually in med school at Wisconsin, and she promptly told everyone about the exchange. When I went to kick him out of the condo, he told me that his mother had turned into a raging alcoholic and that kicking him out would mean he couldn't take care of her anymore. He stole a whole bunch of stuff from me, some of which he still has, and after all of it, he had the gall to text and ask if he could manage my finances for me at his new job in, believe it or not, wealth management. I guarantee you he's stealing from every one of his clients. But when he said he stole from his friend, it really changed my opinion that he wasn't just an insecure millennial trying to find his way between college and the real world. He's a class A raging narcissist, and holy crap, am I glad he's out of my life forever. A little over a year after being officially together, I finally put together that they had the cancer gene in their family. Despite being crazy in love with her, this made me want to back out because I totally saw a future with her. Her grandpa and dad both had head and neck cancers, 2 aunts and 1 uncle were survivors of ovarian and lung cancer. I knew I wanted kids and she did too, so there was always this looming fear that our future kids might get it. Still went through because she mattered more to me than all my fears combined. Life plays a cruel joke, and despite having no vices and being an occasional drinker, she got the big C as well. Head and neck, just like Grandpa and her dad. Lost her a little over a year ago. Still no regrets. Still love her a lot. Damn. My wife and I married quickly without getting to know each other much. She was raised in a Mormon home and I had converted to Mormonism at 18. We played the roles of provider and nurturer in our marriage according to the teachings of the faith. I left the faith about 6 years ago. She stopped attending about 2 to 3 years ago. The very difficult conversation when I left made us talk about things more than we ever had before. We dove deeply into so many aspects of our life, marriage, and desires for the future. I realized after years of marriage that she was actually an incredibly smart, dynamic woman. I loved her a lot before this. I always thought she was amazing, but because of the dynamics of each of our upbringings and the dynamic of the faith, I never realized how intelligent she was. I ask her opinions on things all the time now. We left our faith, ditched most of our baggage from our sexist upbringings, and I realized how great of a lifelong companion I have, and I am ecstatic about this. That he had been cheating on me and racking up debt. We had gotten married and made life plans that he had always known would never come to fruition because of what he was doing behind closed doors. Yet he allowed me to marry him anyway, knowing I was signing up for a life I did not want and that we did not agree on. I would have been the one to bear the brunt of the consequences for his actions. Well, I'm glad you got out of there. He told me from the very get-go that he was diagnosed with Asperger's in grade school, but I just brushed it off because I know many people who half-heartedly claim to be autistic. But a couple weeks ago, I was lying in bed while he was putting away one of his 50 pocket watches in his holding box that he keeps in pristine condition tucked away in his sock drawer. Then he proceeded to pick out a new axe to carry in his backpack full of supplies, and for some reason, it just hit me for the first true time that he is totally, 100% on the spectrum. And it made me think back to the times when he has done things that absolutely infuriate me, and he has no idea he had done something wrong, and suddenly I could see that he wasn't being manipulative or underhanded. His brain simply works in a different way than mine, and he even tried to warn me of this. I just for some reason chose to disregard the information. He is super willing to meet me halfway, even when he doesn't understand why something bothers me. He acknowledges how I feel, and he stops doing it. He is the goofiest, most eccentric ball of love I have ever met, and coming to terms with his autism has made me love him all that much more. Men! I don't know who needs to hear this, but there's still hope! He was always very secretive and a little paranoid. One example, I learned about 15 years into the relationship that his birthday is not in May like he said, but in November. When he moved to the US from England in the 1970s, they had written it down incorrectly in his passport, and he never changed it to his correct birth date. I still don't know why. Every flat and clean surface can and will become a closet space. It was my girlfriend of 2 years last night in town before leaving for college. She told me she was hanging out with her friends, which I was fine with, as we had planned to see each other every weekend. Turns out she didn't see her friends. She hung out with her ex-boyfriend and then left for school the next day and didn't answer her phone for a week. First time I talked to her after she left, she told me what she did and broke up with me. See, this kind of thing is why people have trust issues. That and much worse things. Things that have already been covered in this video even. There's a ton of things I discovered over the years we were together, but the biggest one was how he had lied about his exes. He talked terribly about them and would make them all sound like cheaters and liars or just plain psychopathic. It turns out that's not the truth at all. They were none of those things, and I found out the hard way that it was him that embodied those qualities all along. We have broken up and gotten back together many times over the past 6 years, but it ended for the last time this weekend. Good for you. She is perfectly okay flipping out on the kids. I mean, full-on cussing them out and yelling about stuff. I ultimately confronted her about it, and she said, "So everyone else is allowed to express themselves when they're upset, but not me?" We had to have a long talk after that one, as would be expected. Her walls were just too high to ever get through. Intimacy, affection, emotion, romance, all gone, and she was unwilling to change. As can be the case with some to many people for a myriad of reasons, and it can be quite sad. I was just out of high school and was dating a girl. We were fairly serious but young. We went to Subway for lunch, and she was super rude to the poor girl working behind the counter, and after we left, she was saying how stupid she was. Couldn't even make the sandwich right. I started to notice she was rude to lots of service and retail workers. I saw her in a much different light after that. We didn't last very long. I think there's a saying where it goes something like, if someone's nice to you but not to the waiter, then they're probably not really a nice person. We are Texans. He likes beans in his chili, but I've decided I can make it work. 3 years into a 5-year relationship, my now ex-girlfriend finally told me she had a bad eating disorder after I overheard her throwing up after a meal. It was something I suspected in the past and questioned her on, but she was adamant with her denials. This was not the end. In fact, it was really just planting a seed of doubt. 2 years from this point, we were still together, and I was still trying to support her through treatment of her disorder. Eventually, more of her secrets started to come out: secretive alcoholism, childhood abuse, cheating. Even with all the secrets and lies, it was not easy to cut ties, but it was needed in order to keep my own sanity. My wife and I have very little boundaries. Oftentimes, while we're having a conversation in our room, one of us needs to use the bathroom. We'll just follow each other in the bathroom and continue talking. If the conversation is good enough, poop won't hinder our dialogue. However, there are times when my wife is in the bathroom and locks the door. I always thought it was weird, but it didn't bother me. We've been married for 9 years now. We met at 15 and are now 28. We've grown up together, graduated together, traveled together. We know each other so well and have nothing to hide from one another. Or so I thought. This all changed one day. I was feeding our kids lunch and she was in the bathroom. Unbeknownst to her, she did not lock the door. When I walked in on her, I witnessed something that I never thought I would see. Something that lived in the back of my head, but I didn't think it could be real. My wife of 13 years relationship, 9 years of marriage, 3 kids together, was shaving her upper lip. She is Puerto Rican and has a little peach fuzz that you can't even really notice, and she was shaving it like it was a full-on mustache. She looked at me with this embarrassed look, and I thought to myself, what else is she hiding? I don't know that I'll ever look at her the same again. That one was really cute. I like the tongue-in-cheek nature of it. She would ignore my opinion about anything. It started small, like forcing me to watch movies I didn't like with her. After that, she made dinner with food I disliked, then go to theme parks even though I told her I didn't want to go in a roller coaster. Over the years, it escalated to her saying we wanted at least 3 children. I've never wanted kids, and she knew that. I started to notice I didn't want to spend time with her anymore. It was exhausting. So, bye. We were together for 4 years before she told me she was obsessed with Star Wars. Like, what the hell? That's day one stuff. We could have been going to midnight shows and dressing up. Oh, the squandered time. One of you could have been Chewbacca and the other could be Han Solo. I didn't have much to do with my significant other, now ex's parents, for the first few years. This changed after we were married, and I discovered that she was basically a psychological carbon copy of her father, and I, her mother. Only problem with that was her father was a domineering man man who wore his wife down over many years to the point that she was basically mute and offered no resistance to him. What he wanted, he got. My ex was already showing a tendency to bully me into supplication, and I realized I was heading down the same path as her mother. I had already started giving up trying to argue about anything with her. I saw my future quite clearly one day and left. To come to that realization, the back and forth and look in the mirror, that must be terrifying. Well, one day I was having a really crappy day at work. Headache, annoyed at my coworkers, etc., and was moaning about it to him. Then he shows up unannounced with Advil and my favorite coconut water, which was really frickin' sweet and made my day good again. But then, when I get home, this dude had a new PS4 controller waiting for me, with takeout from my favorite Mexican restaurant. So yeah, reevaluated a whole bunch, and now I'm saving up for a ring. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.